Hi guys, Kar Yong here, and wanted to do a very quick video recording to share with you and highlight to you a potential trade idea that you might want to consider. And we're going to talk about the Australia dollar. Okay, but before we dive into the charts and to walk you through the analysis based on the charts and why we are looking at the Australia dollar, I would like to also share with you a little bit into the thought process as to, out of all the pairs, why do we select the Australia dollar. Okay, so if you have been following me sometime, you would know that we don't only look at the charts. Okay, we also consider the sentiment, the COT perspective, and of course the fundamental side of things. So over here this week, what I observed from the Australia point of view is that, okay, we have actually seen the net position of the Australia futures drop. Okay, so from the past few weeks it was as high as close to 16,000, and with the most recent one is only at 3,008. And we can see over here the changes in the net position was significant for the past few weeks as well, right? And we dive deeper into it, we can see that the large speculators are actually adding on to their short position, increasing from somewhere around 43,000 to latest data here is 60,000. Okay, and of course the long here didn't really change much. So overall, what I'm seeing over here is the speculators right now, they are transiting, they are adding on to their short position. Okay, so that itself gives me the idea that if I'm gonna trade the Australia currency, I would rather focus on sell opportunity. Okay, but then again, you know, out of all the currency, how do I pick Australia, right? Why Australia and not, let's say, the New Zealand? Okay, since they are both closely correlated. Okay, and that's where we also look into the intercorrelation, the relationship between the two very closely correlated currency pair. And of course, over here you can see, right, what we've prepared every week for our community over here. You know, this analysis on Australia, New Zealand. Okay, the bias over here for this week itself is bearish, which means that if we were to choose to sell between Australia and New Zealand, right, this two currency, the Australia would have a much higher tendency of weakening relatively to the New Zealand, the Kiwi, right? Okay, so if I bring you to the charts of Aussie Kiwi, okay, so you can see here it's very clear, right? Both higher time frame and lower time frame, they are bearish and biased. Okay, the reason is pretty straightforward. Okay, so you can see daily chart is basically an impulse push to the downside. And if we were to look at the 4-hour chart, we do see that as well. Okay, and we anticipate some form of correction for the move to continue lower. So for that reason, between the Aussie and New Zealand, that's where we want to focus on Aussie. Okay, so that's how, you know, the idea and the thought process behind why I'm focusing on Australian dollar instead of the New Zealand dollar. Okay, and of course, if you take a look at dollar, you likely see that this week there's a higher tendency that the dollar is going to continue correcting to the upside. Okay, so that is in favor for this position here, the Aussie dollar trade. Okay, now if you take a look at the daily chart on the Australia dollar, okay, what we see over here, of course, is this is a diagonal forming, right? Very slow move to the upside, and we see on the daily, this is also very obvious, impulse correction, and we are now seeing an impulse smaller correction, and we anticipate this to continue to the downside all the way towards the previous low over here, which coincide with some Fibonacci confluences around the 6,780 region. Okay, so that's where we are looking to target for our short. And on the 4-hour time frame, this is very clear, this setup, right? I think if you're following me for some time, there's no need for much explanation when you see this setup. It's basically an impulse, and right now it's forming a correction. Okay, and every time we see this pattern, we see this consolidation, and the combination of this, we know there's a very high tendency that the future move is going to continue to the downside, and that's the reason why we are looking to sell. Okay, and of course we talk a little bit more in depth in today's daily session on how we're going to execute this, right? Of course, you can see over here right now, a simple execution is of course with the break of this low. That's a breakout trade. Okay, and of course we are also monitoring this level here. If price were to consolidate and correct higher, that is also a potential key level to monitor. Okay, so it's a very simple setup. But what's more important over here, I hope to share a little bit more with you guys, is how we came to the conclusion of focusing on Aussie dollar, okay, and how we came to the conclusion that I want to focus on selling the Australian dollar. Okay, so I hope this little sharing here and there is helpful and beneficial to you guys as well, on top of just, you know, focusing on, okay, what to trade. Of course, in this whole process here, I would like to give you the different perspective and insight so that you can become a more holistic trader as compared to, you know, someone who is just asking for tips. Okay, that's not going to be sustainable and consistent for you. Right, so again, happy to share. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments under this video here. I'll look through them and I'll answer your questions accordingly.